Hi, my name is Victor. I'm a long-time your friend in the neighborhood blitz chess player. And I've often played in Harvard Square throughout the years from 1990 to 2007. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about this beautiful game called chess, which is often related to as much an art as it is a science, at least to us flesh and blood human beings. During this last year and a half of COVID, the game has picked up exponentially in popularity, in interest, and studying and playing, as well as love other games, for instance, of strategy. So, I want to introduce you a little bit to a brief history of this game. Chess has a long and studied history. The game has changed quite a bit from its earliest forms in India. The modern iteration we enjoy today wasn't known until the 16th century. There were no clocks or pieces, and pieces were standardized until the 19th century. The official world championship title came into existence by the late 19th century. Shortly after the first big tournaments were held and multiple styles of play had began to fully develop. Although the first book on openings was published as early as 1843, theory as we know it didn't truly evolve until the early mid-20th century. Computer engines and databases didn't come into play until the very late 20th century. Let's take a brief history of the origins of chess. Chess as we know it today was born out of the Indian game called Chaturanga before the 1600s AD. The game spread throughout Asia and Europe over the coming centuries and eventually evolved into what we know as chess around the 16th century. One of the first masters of the game was a Spanish priest named Ruy Lopez. Although he didn't invent the opening name after him, he analyzed it in a book he published in 1561. Chess theory was so primitive back then that Lopez advocated the strategy of playing with the sun in your opponent's eyes. How do you like that for a winning strategy? Personally, best strategy against me, people smoking and puffing the smoke in my face, that was enough to cause me to lose. Chess theory moved at a snail's pace until the mid-18th century. In 1749, the French master François-André Philidor stepped into the scene with his book titled Analyse du jeu des échecs. I can't pronounce that correctly, but this book covered some new opening ideas, including the defense, which still bears his name, and also contained Philidor's famous defense in rook and pawn endgames, an endgame technique that is still used today. Philidor's famous statement that the pawns are the soul of the game was introduced to the world in this book. Chess continued to gain popularity throughout the world. In the mid-19th century, the standardization of chess sets occurred. Before the 1850s, chess sets weren't uniform at all. In 1849, Jacques of London, a manufacturer of games and toys, introduced a new style of pieces created by Nathaniel Cook. These pieces were endorsed by Howard Staunton, the strongest player of his time. The new style of pieces, known as the Staunton Pattern, became instantly popular and were used in tournaments all over clubs and all over the world. The Staunton Pieces and minor variations of it are still covered and considered to be the standard for all tournament chess sets today. The 19th century also marked the introduction of chess clocks to competitive play. Before chess clocks became the norm, a single game could last up to 14 hours. With the standardization of chess sets and introduction of chess clocks, the equipment needed for matches and tournaments were set in place. Chess itself was developing greatly during the 1800s. The most famous games of this time were swashbuckling attacking games. Strong defensive ideas hadn't been learned yet. If a player wasn't sacrificing their pieces right and left, trying to checkmate their opponent in a violent manner, then it wasn't a fun game. It wasn't considered fun. It was during this attacking era in chess that the American player Paul Morphy, here's a picture of Paul Morphy, the first known American world chess champion. Morphy was the embodiment of all these romantic and aggressive attacking ideas. During his tour of Europe, Morphy soundly trounced every major player in the world, except Howard Staunton, who was past his prime and didn't accept Morphy's challenge. Paul Morphy steamrolled Adolf Anderssen, Louis Paulson, Daniel Horwitz, and a host of other masters during his era as champion. So that began a whole era of American world champions after that, and starting very accurately precise recorded games throughout history, as chess is one of the best recorded games and recorded anything throughout history. So I love the game. It's got me tons of enjoyment, fun, camaraderie, conversation, which for me these days, camaraderie, the conversation, kibitzing, as we call coffee house chess, the relating, fun, joking around while playing chess is most of the fun for me, or at least half the fun. And there you go.
Hi, I'm your host, Brian D. Pelletier. I'll teach you how to set up the chess pieces. I'll also tell you what the points are, what the moves are, and also how to castle, and what is the strategies of chess. First, we gotta start with the whites. From A is to the left, H is to the right, black is the opposite. H is to the left and A is to the right. Let's try for the chess pieces, shall we? This right here is called a pawn. Okay, pawns are always on the second row on the board for both sides. So let's show you. There are 8 pawns for each color. Pawns can only go forward 1 or 2 spaces. Doesn't matter which one. Let's try black. 1 or 2. Again, 1 or 2. After you move 1 or 2 spaces forward, you can't move 2 spaces again. It's an illegal move. How do you capture a piece if it's diagonal from you? This is how you do it. Whites always has to go first, but literally you can go either way. But really, whites is supposed to go first. So if you go move 2, if you move any piece that's 1 or 2 spaces, if it's moving the second space, I can only attack you once, diagonal. Again, let's show that again. The pawn can only go diagonal if a piece is diagonal from the pawn. But the only time you can't go diagonal, if, for example, if the king was in check. I'll talk about the king a little bit later. So, after you clear up the board a little bit, let me show you something else. If your pawn, doesn't matter which way, if your pawn reaches the other side of the board, you can get a piece. If you want a queen, you can have this as a queen. You can see it, this is the queen. Or you can use this rook as the queen. The only way you can make this as a queen, if you flip the rook upside down. That's automatic a queen. Again, if the pawn reaches the other side of the board without getting the piece taken, you can get a queen. A rook can be upside down as a queen, or if you want to choose, you can get a bishop or a knight as one of your pieces. It's your choice. Again, pawn can move forward 1 or 2 spaces forward. It can only attack if it's not in check, or if the piece is on the diagonal of it, you can attack it, but you only have to go forward afterwards. If there's no other pieces diagonal from it either. And you can't move the pieces again twice after you move the first or second move. That is a pawn. Now we gotta talk about a knight. I'm gonna set up the pieces how it is. There's a reason why. Knights are in this box from each side. 1, 2, on black. Knights, same thing on the other side, mirror reaction. So the knight looks like this. Knights are the only pieces can jump over other pieces. No other pieces can. They can only make an L shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can do it this way, but it has to be an L shape only. Doesn't matter what position it is. Again, a knight, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can do 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter. All that matters is it has to be only an L shape, not a long L shape. That's for knights. Bishops are next to knights when you set them up. They can only go diagonal on its own color. If you got a little confused, it's okay. These are called bishops, the long pointy whistles that you want to call them to make them look like. They're called bishops. They can only go diagonal on its own color. Let me show you. If the bishop is on the white square, it can only go, doesn't matter how many spaces it can go, but it can only go on the diagonal of its own square. On the white square. If this was on the black square, same thing. It can only go diagonal on the black square. That is called a bishop. Rooks. They're each corner. When you set them up, they're on the corner sides. These are called rooks. You can also call them castles. They look like a tall castle, sort of. They can only go up, down, side to side. That's it. Doesn't matter how many squares. But you want to try to protect the rook too, because there's at least the second most important piece in the board. I'll tell you about the points a little bit later, but I'm going to show you the chess pieces. The queens, they go on their own color. White goes on a white square, queen goes on a black square. But the queens have to go on the left side from the white square, only from the left side of your side. Queens are kind of like bishops and rooks. The reason why I say that is they can go diagonal on its own square, whatever you place the queens are. They can also go up and down, side to side. The only shape that the queen can't go is the L shape. That's illegal. You can't do that. So this is a queen. It can go up, back, side to side, or diagonal. Doesn't matter how many spaces, but you want to protect this queen. This is the most important, powerful piece on the board. Kings. Kings on each side. Kings can only go one space at a time. Doesn't matter what direction it goes, it has to be one space. That's it. King only go one space. I tell you of another way that you can't do the next one. So that's the king's move. Next one, castling. There's the king side and the queen side. The reason, you got the queen here, you got the king here. This is called the king side because this is the king here. On the left side is the king. For me, the right side is the king. This is a queen side. It goes this way, queen side. Same thing for me, this side. Trying to set up the pieces in mirror reaction. So, how to castle? Easy. If these pieces wasn't here, this piece wasn't here, this piece wasn't here, this piece wasn't here. Either side, you can do one side or the other. But the only way is that you can't castle through check. You guys are confused of what through check means? Through check is, for example, if this queen was here and you're trying to castle this way, you're going through check because this is check. If you come through this way and trying to castle, you're going through check because the attacker is going to attack this square. So it's called through check. Now, if any of the pieces wasn't through check, this is how you castle. On your king side is 1, 2, rook, over. You only have to move the king first, not the rook. Because if you move the rook first, that means you, and the king afterwards, you're taking 2 turns. That's illegal. Again, king side, 1, 2, rook, over. Note that you can do from the king side is 1 square from your left. Queen side, queen's here. Queen side is 1, 2, always 2 spaces either way. Has to be 2 spaces. Again, 1, 2, rook, over. From your right side of black is 2 squares from the right. It's always 2 jumps. 1, 2, or 1, 2. The king side, 1, 2, rook over. Queen side, 1, 2, rook over. That's called castling. So I showed you the pawns. If you move them from the others on one side of the board to the other without being captured, you get a queen or a piece if you want. I show you the knight, only L shape only. Rooks, up, down, side to side. Queens, up, down, side to side, or diagonal. Now if you're trying to figure out what is the most important pieces on the board to protect, is mainly the queen, but you want to also protect the king mostly, because if you don't protect the king, you get checkmate, game's over. So, pawns, worth only 50 points if you're trying to play points wise. Knights, and bishops worth 250 points. Rooks are 500 points. Queens, 900. And the lowest points here in the board is the king. It's worth 1 point. So how do you get a checkmate? Is by playing the pieces how it goes. If the king can't go anywhere, it's called checkmate. Of stalemates. 1, if the king can't move and you do not put the king in check with your pieces, that's called stalemate. There's another way of stalemate too, if you got only a king and a couple of pawns and they got a lot of high pieces. Now, you can also do is get a stalemate by counting
50 moves.
You can also get a stalemate if there's only 2 kings on the board. If it's just these 2 and all the pieces have been taken, that's called stalemate. Stalemate means no one wins and there's no checkmate. Game's over. If you have any questions or confusing whatever, just come down to Main Street in Greenfield Games on Wednesdays from 5 o'clock to 7, and I can teach you how to play chess and how to also to moves and strategies. Strategies, you're trying to make sure that you're trying to capture your opponent's pieces and get them in checkmate before they take you. And you're trying to make sure and trying to read what the people are playing, because you have to know what the next move is going to be. It's going to take a little practice, but you can do it. Trying to understand and trying to figure out what the attacker is going to do. So all the pawns are in the second row. Rooks are in the corner. Knights are next to the rooks from the corner. Bishops are next to the knights. The queen and the king are next to the bishops. But the queen has to go on her own color. There are 32 black and 32 white squares. Now you guys are questioning of looking at the board. There's letters and numbers on the side of the board. What is that? Let me tell you. Each square has a letter and number invisible. It's very invisible, like you can't see it. But you have to do is when you play professional chess, they ask you what piece is going to where. So let me show you. For each corner and each side has letters and numbers. You got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. From A through A or H through H, there are numbers on the side, on your right and left side. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But the numbers are across from each other. It doesn't go 1 through 8 and 1 through 8 because that's going to be confusing. So for example, if I want to move this pawn right here, this is on C2. If I want to move it to C4, 1, 2. There you go. C4 is right here. Again, each side has numbers. Bottoms have letters. Each box has a letter and number. You can't see it, but it's there. If I want to move this pawn right here from E2 to E4, it's right here. You can tell because this is E and this is the 4. It's kind of like when you look at a map and you're trying to figure out what town, it would tell you on E4, whatever degrees, whatever it is, and it's right there because the little box. It would tell you the square and also the letter. Same thing with the chess. If I want to move pawn to A2 to A3, it's right there. You will see the board when you get face to face. So So each box has its own letter and number. This is a king square because it's on the king side. This is a queen, going on the queen square. Bishop box, knight box, rook. For each box has different letters and numbers, and I showed you how to do castling, what the points are, and what the pieces are. So that's pretty much all about chess. If you have any questions or anything whatsoever, I can probably help you out at Greenfield Games on Main Street in Greenfield on Wednesdays from 5 to 7. It's not far from TD Bank, so if you have any other questions, there will be a link right in the bottom. It would tell you the address if you want to know where it is. So hopefully I see you soon. I want to thanks to Greenfield Community Television for helping me out of getting this film all set, and also filming this. Next one, it'll be showing people of different people playing chess. That'll be the next season. Hopefully I see you soon, and enjoy chess, and good luck.